Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review, so hopefully you find this one interesting. This movie is a horror film from Canada, English language, released in the year 2007, directed by Maurice Devereaux, and this film is called End of the Line. So the story to End of the Line, it centres upon this beautiful young woman who works at this hospital. She's just finished her night shift. It's been a very traumatic day because one of her ex-patients actually killed herself in mysterious circumstances, and so she's feeling a little bit guilty about this. She believes that this woman had a mental illness and they released her too early. So she's beating herself up about it, and she really doesn't think this day could get any worse, but unfortunately, little does she know, she's about to descend into a living nightmare. So when she's waiting for a train to come in the subway, she's been harassed by this really creepy guy, and so this man that introduces himself to this woman actually saves her from this creep. The creep is still lingering in the background, but he's a little bit too afraid to actually come to this woman again, and so she believes that she's safe, but when they get on the train, they realise that they're being accompanied by some religious fanatics who are hell-bent on carrying out the word of God. Now this means basically the leader of this religion is going to send them a message on their pages, which is going to say carry out God's work by eliminating sin from the living people, so that when they go into the afterworld they're going to be pure. And so this means a lot of brutal things, and so the night is about to be plunged into a very bloody game of survival, and whether or not this woman and her friend can actually make it home is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on End of the Line. I actually watched this movie when it actually first came out, so it was actually quite a few years ago, in fact 11 or so years ago, and so I thought, alright, well, I was actually disappointed I didn't get the chance to actually review it back then, and so I don't know why, but I've always remembered this film, and so I couldn't remember too much about it, but I thought, alright, well, why do I keep remembering End of the Line? You know, what was it about End of the Line that really got me the first time I watched it? Is that I remembered that it wasn't a great film, but it's something that really lasted in my memory, so it had that everlasting quality. So I really wanted to track it down and watch it again and do a review, but it was very hard to actually track down legally. And so I thought, alright, well, I'm going to have to just wait until I go into a secondhand store and hopefully they've got it on sale, but I never could actually get my hands on a copy until I saw it on eBay last week and I finally purchased it. And last night I rewatched the film, and I will say that yes, the movie does have that everlasting feel, and the reason why I remembered it for all this time is the fantastic atmosphere that the film has. Yes, the movie does have a lot of problems. It's a very amateurish film in a lot of regards, but that amateurish quality gives it the level of charm that you have in made-for-TV horror films of the 90s, whether it's Stephen King adaptations where you've got some dodgy acting or dodgy script, but regardless of those negatives, those movies were very, very creepy. Those movies actually made me feel as a child that I wanted to sleep with the covers over my eyes. I wanted to sleep with the light on. It sent a chill down my spine, and horror movies these days, they don't really do that, is that they're focused on making money, and the way to make money is to actually go into the horror genre because you can be lazy. You just splash a lot of gore, CGI blood, splash a lot of breasts and gratuitous sex scenes, and you've got a horror film. And that's why horror is not taken very seriously these days. But back in the days of the 90s, when I first got into horror, it was all about making me feel really scared, giving me nightmares. And so I think End of the Line really does that. This is very reminiscent, and it is a homage to those films. And this is something I loved about it, is that it's a genuinely scary film. The movie has a made-for-TV feel, and a lot of the time that is a negative. But in this regard, as I said, it reminded me of the atmosphere of Pet Sematary, where you knew that it wasn't a cinematic masterpiece. You knew it wasn't going to take the world by storm. It's not a movie you actually watch in the cinema. It's a movie you watch on your own entertainment system. And this is a movie that is very personal, and because it's very personal, it's not trying too hard. It's not extravagant in its special effects, and so it genuinely creeps you out, whether it's the story, whether it's the overall look at religion. It's basically not saying religion is bad, but it's showing you how destructive some sectors within religion can be. And I thought that was a very scary aspect of the film, is that there are people like this who actually carry out acts of violence in the name of God, but in fact, in reality, they're just psychotic. Whether it's Christianity, Islam, a lot of religions are guilty of doing this and basically pushing religion in a very extreme way. And this movie, it's a very caricaturish way, but I still thought, okay, well, I get that sense of dread that the movie really wants. It actually creeps up on you. It makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. And so the atmosphere is what I loved about this film, and that is the reason why I remembered it for all this time. You've also got the setting of the train in the subway. I thought that was fantastic. The game of cat and mouse was actually quite suspenseful in some areas. I thought the gore effects were absolutely phenomenal, very practical. There is no CGI in this film. So once again, it takes you back to the good old-fashioned horror, where horror was at its strongest. And so I think Maurice Devereaux does a very good job at actually creating something that is a genuinely scary experience, complemented by a very good ending that I thought was very ambiguous, so you can make your own interpretation as to what you think the story was about. And you've also got a very good lead. The lead in this movie was very, very attractive. attractive. And so this is everything. It ticks all the boxes in what you want from a popcorn horror film. This is the definition of what popcorn horror is. It's a movie that's very self-aware. It's not taking itself seriously. It wants to be fun, but at the same time wants to be scary. And so I think the atmosphere and the blood and gore allow the fun and allow the scare factor to actually produce a movie that will actually appeal to a lot of horror fans. And so the negatives to this film actually work as a positive as well, as I said, because movies in the 90s, because they weren't taking themselves so seriously, some of the negatives, whether it's the acting or the script, actually gives the movie charm and a little bit of that certain level of charm that is missing in horror films these days. And so I thought that the acting in some areas in this movie was a little bit off, the script was a little bit off, but once again, because it's a caricature sort of film, because it's a popcorn style of film, I could forgive that. If it was taking itself really seriously, I would actually notice these problems a lot more, but because it's not, because it's alleviating all of that sort of thought-provoking material that the movie could have gone into, I could forgive that to a point where I would say that this is definitely a movie that you'd watch with a group of friends on a Friday night. It's got some phenomenal gore, some really scary moments. It's a look at religion, and it also has some otherworldly supernatural elements in as well, but that make it that very ambiguous film. And so it's definitely a movie that I'm really happy I picked up. It's, as I said, it's not perfect, but it doesn't strive out to be a perfect film, and so for that reason, I'm going to give End of the Line 3 stars. Go out there and see it. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you there. Bye.